And sorry about the technical difficulties, but we are ready to go. So this is the Board of Chiropractic Examiners. This Government and Public Affairs Committee meeting is being held by teleconference under the Governor's Executive Order N as in Nancy -29-20. The date is June 28, 2021, and the time is approximately 2:04 p.m. The members of the public that are listening and would like to provide public comment by telephone will be limited to 3 minutes unless, at the discretion of the board, circumstances require a longer period. Members of the public will not be permitted to yield their allotted time to other members of the public to make comments. The board's paramount responsibility is to protect the health, welfare, and safety of the public through licensure, education, and enforcement in chiropractic care. Please be aware that this meeting is being audio recorded. Please turn off or silence all cell phones. We will now take the roll of the committee. Mr. Sweet, would you please call the roll?
Frank Rufino.
Present.
Raphael Sweet is present. We have a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Sweet. Is there any public comments for items not on the agenda? Moderator, do we have anybody in the queue?
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the committee, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment for items not on the agenda, please click that Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. We're currently sharing instructions on the screen for your reference, and in the Ask field, typically in the lower right-hand corner of your WebEx screen, please type, "I would like to make a public comment," and send to all panelists. I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
Thank you. The Q&A panel is now closed.
Mr. Rufino, I think you're on mute there. We can't hear you.
Oh, so sorry. Yes, so the next item on the agenda is the approval of the meeting minutes of April 13, 2021. We need a motion to approve unless there's any discussions or correction first.
I'll make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from April 13, 2021.
I second that motion. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Abstention?
Mr. Rufino, forgive the interruption, but we do need to request public comment before we vote on the motion. I know I wasn't fast enough there.
No problem, Ms. Knutz. Thank you for the reminder. I appreciate it. Moderator, do we have any public comments on agenda item number 3, which is the approval of the meeting minutes?
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the committee, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click that Q&A icon at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. Go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Please, moderator.
All right, the Q&A panel is now closed.
Excellent. So now we are back on the motion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstention? The motion carries unanimously. Next is agenda item number 4, where we will hear updates, discussion, and a possible action regarding pending legislation. I'm going to turn it over to staff, starting with item 4A, AB 29. Mr. Pulio or Andrea?
Hi, hi, sorry. Yeah, so we actually only have, you have your list of all of the bills that we were watching this legislative session, and we're down to 3 now that are still moving. The rest are dead or have become 2-year bills. And so the 3 bills that are still on our radar are SB 731, which is a criminal records relief, 8305, which is a veteran services notice, and SB 607, professions and vocations. And so we're just going to be discussing those 3. And Andrea, did you want to summarize the bills for the committee members? Or are you on the line?
Can you hear me?
Yes. Okay. There you go.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm having some technical difficulties with my computer as well. So I'll just provide a quick update on every bill listed, and I'll start off with AB 29. So AB 29 has been authored by Assemblymember Cooper, and it was held in the Assembly Appropriations Committee. This bill would have required materials for a public meeting to be provided to the public at the same time they are provided to board members, or at least 70 hours in advance of the meeting. The committee took a watch position on this bill at our last meeting in April. So that's what we have for that bill right now. And then I'll go ahead and move on to AB 646. And
Andrea, I'm sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to ask the committee members, did you want a recap of all the bills, or would you prefer to just focus on the 3 that are still active?
I think, Mr. Pulio, the 3 active will be fine, although I have one bill that I requested to be addressed during this meeting, AB 885. So maybe we can do that separately,
Certainly.
if it's okay. So, yes.
If you'd like, I can go ahead and start off with AB 885 and then move on to the other ones that are currently active.
Yes, and the other 3. That will be great. Thank you.
Oh, no problem. I'll start off with AB 8885, which has been authored by Assemblymember Quirk, and he was retained in the Assembly Committee on Governmental Organization. This bill would have amended the teleconference statutes of the Bagley-Keene Act to require public meetings held via teleconference to be both audibly and visually available to the public. The committee did not have the opportunity to take a position on this bill at our last committee meeting because per Mr. Rufino's request, this is the first time we're discussing it. But it's something that of interest to the committee, so we wanted to go ahead and provide a brief summary. This bill has died, so it's inactive, but it's something that could possibly come back next year. So it's just something that we want to keep under our radar.
So at this point, the bill has died.
Correct.
Okay, well, then it's a moot point at this point, I guess, to take a position. So, but I would recommend to keep it an open, to keep it an eye on it for if and when it comes back.
Definitely. We'll watch this bill.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
I'll go
I
was going to ask.
go ahead. I'm sorry, Mr. Rufino.
No, that's okay. I just was going to ask the other board member if he had any questions on AB 885.
Not at this time, no.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Go ahead and proceed then.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and go over AB 305, which is currently active. This bill has been authored by Assemblymember Mention, and it has been referred to the Senate Committee on Military and Veteran Affairs. This bill requires specified state agencies to inquire whether an applicant is a veteran and request permission to submit their information to the Department of Veteran Affairs. Just want to let you know that we are supportive of the author's intent to increase awareness of services and benefits available to veterans. However, this bill doesn't really or directly impact our board because we already inquire as to veteran status on our applications. And this bill is really applied to other state agencies that are listed on the analyses. So it doesn't really have an impact on the board. And for that reason, we recommend a neutral position.
Yeah, just to clarify, it's the bill actually mentions 13 agencies or departments, including DMV, various universities and colleges, but it doesn't. We're not DCA nor any of its boards are named in the bill, so it's not applicable to us or any of the boards in the department. So it's it's just something that if we were named, we would be interested, but it really doesn't have any impact on us.
Okay, so the staff recommendation then is to take a neutral position on AB 305. Mr. Sweet, do you have any comments or objections?
No, I mean, if the bill doesn't apply to our department, I don't see a reason to take any position on it either way. So I think neutral is, I'm supportive of that position.
Okay, so Mr. Pulio, so do we still need to have a motion to take a neutral position, or can we just adopt a neutral?
No, actually, we could just actually move this to watch, and you don't need to take it because we're not taking a position on it. So I don't believe, and Mr. Knotes, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe there's any need to take a vote on something that the board isn't going to take a formal position on or lobby the legislature.
I think that's absolutely correct, Mr. Pulio. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, excellent. Then do we need any public comment on that, Mr. Knutz, or can we skip to the next bill?
We can take public comment on this entire item, which are all of the bill reports, unless there's a specific motion. So we can keep going. Thank you.
Okay, got it. Perfect. Okay, sounds good. Well then, Andrea, please proceed.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and move on to SB 607. This bill has been authored by Senator Ross and has been referred to the Assembly Committee on Business Professions. This bill requires DCA boards to waive all fees associated with the application and initial license for military spouses and partners. Although this fee would result in a slight reduction in the board's revenue, staff is supportive of the author's intent to assist military personnel and their families relocating to California. For that reason, we recommend a neutral position.
Okay.
I'm just going to chime in again. This bill, it's kind of a mixed bag because certainly we don't oppose the intent of the bill. It will have a fiscal impact on us, which would be concerning if it was major, but it's the total fiscal impact, I believe, was less than $3,000 a year, which we have plenty of room, even though right now our fund condition is we're facing a fund deficit. We have room in our budget. We don't overspend our budget, but we are in the process of seeking a fee increase. But that's kind of irrelevant to this because when our budget is fully funded, we have enough room in our budget to absorb this, and it would be the cost spread out over 13,000 licensees would be minimal to other licensees for us to absorb these. It's just for the application cost. It's not ongoing ongoing license renewal cost. So we're not inclined to oppose it because we do support the intent. And that's why it's something that I wouldn't recommend supporting necessarily, but I certainly wouldn't want to oppose it. So that's why we're recommending the neutral position.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Puleo. Mr. Sweet, any questions, concerns?
I think Mr. Julio addressed them. I guess the main question I had was if there's any risk that, I mean, even though it's a relatively small amount right now, $3,000 is the potential impact if there's a risk of that increasing very much down the road. This comes into effect. Do we have any idea?
I don't see that changing significantly because we've looked back over recent years since we've been tracking, the number of military personnel and their spouses who seek expedited licenses, because we do ask that now on the application, those questions, and right now we're required to expedite licenses for these individuals. So we have a little bit of historical information about the number of requests we get, and they are very few, and that hasn't changed. So I don't see any reason why it would increase in the future. So right now, I don't have any real concerns about it. It's not going to have a big impact, even though we don't have a huge budget. It's not going to have a huge impact on our budget going forward.
Yeah, I guess my thought is just that if for some reason the fees being waived resulted in an influx of military personnel applying, but I don't think that's. I'm sure you're right. I don't think
Yeah. It's one of those things that it always raises a concern. But in these types of cost absorptions, they can add up, and so it's something we want to be aware of. But we're also supportive of doing whatever we can to help the armed forces, the veterans and their spouses and so on. So again, it's not something I think the board would want to oppose, and it's something that's imposed on the military personnel because they're not choosing to move to California to get a free license application. They're being forced, not so much forced, but it's a requirement of their job to. If they get stationed here, that they have to move here. And so we want to do everything we can to help them get situated in California. And ultimately, if they're licensed in California, that'll be ongoing revenue from license renewals. So it probably would balance out a bit.
Correct. Well, I don't have any further questions on that one.
Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Sweet. Then we are, so the staff is recommending an SB 607 to be neutral. Correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So
this one, I'm sorry, Mr. Rufino, this one you would probably want to take a vote on because it is, the other one is, doesn't impact us at all. This does have an impact. And so I would vote to take a neutral position on this one and then recommend that to the full board.
okay, so I need a motion.
I'll make a motion to that we take a neutral position on SB 607.
Okay, and I second that motion. Before we vote, can we see if there is any public comments?
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the committee, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click that Q&A icon at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Please do.
All right, the Q&A panel is now closed.
Great, thank you, moderator. And we are ready to move into our last bill, SB 731. Andrea?
SB 731 has been authored by Senator Durazo, and it was referred to the Assembly Committee on Public Safety recently. This bill would require the Department of Justice to automatically dismiss or seal records related to felony arrests and felony convictions. So there has been prior legislation related to this one, for instance, AB 1076. And we also want to let you know that while this bill would limit our an individual's criminal history information and the access that we have, to that information, it would also remove barriers for people who have been rehabilitated and are looking for employment. And I know it could be a little controversial at times, but we are supportive of this, the intent of this bill, and we will, as of now, we recommend the watch position, even though there might be a few caveats, but we recommend the watch position right now on this bill.
This is another one that it, on the one hand, it does because they're sealing certain records for certain of arrests and convictions that happen in the past or that don't meet certain criteria. That so then they're sealing those. So it has a much broader impact than just us. Certainly, we wouldn't see certain criminal information that we do see now, but this impacts all records for any entity that's looking at criminal background. So it's not just us, and it's not just DCA boards. It's it's across the board for all other departments and state and local jurisdictions and even private employers. So this is a much bigger public protection issue and public policy issue than us. And so potentially somebody will have a conviction in their past that if we saw it, we may deny a license or now, and then they would have to appeal that to get the license. So it would prevent us from doing that. But I struggle with this a little. But overall, I think this is something that, because it is a very big public policy issue, I'm inclined to defer to the legislature and the governor to make the decision whether they think employers and regulatory entities should have access to that information. So it's not something I personally would recommend opposing, although I could see where if the committee or the board felt that it was going to jeopardize consumers, that they may want to raise concerns. But I would also point out that we would still be doing our due diligence. We would be considering all the information that the legislature and the governor deem appropriate or for us to be able to see, or any other entity. So we would still be considering all the information available to us, but there will be information that will no longer be available. So the question is, do we want to question the wisdom of the legislature and the governor, and especially since it's not something that's specific to our board, it's statewide. So just want to give you both sides of that picture. It's it's not without potential problems, but it's not something that we would be dealing with alone. It would be, again, statewide.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Perleo. Mr. Sweet, the staff is recommending to watch. It sounds like they are also in supportive of the principle of the idea of relief for some of these cases. Are you satisfied with the watch, or should we have a support? Your thoughts, Mr. Sweet?
I think I would like to, I think watch is appropriate. I do think, as Mr. Perleo pointed out, I think there are potential ramifications for consumers. And so I think there is something we should keep an eye on.
Okay, would you like to then make that motion?
Sure. Move to, that we would take a position of watch on SB 731.
Great, and I'll second that motion. And before we vote, do we have any comments from the public? Moderator.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the committee, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click that Q&A icon at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. Go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Please do.
All right.
Okay, great. So back to the motion to watch SB 731. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any oppose? Any abstention? Motion carries. So this concludes the discussion and updates on legislation. We are now moving into agenda item number 5, which is a discussion of dates for future committee meetings. So I'm going to ask
Mr. Rufino.
Yes.
Mr. Rufino, excuse me for the interruption again, but we should take public comment on the entire agendized item at this point before we move to item 5.
Okay, no problem. Sorry about that. So moderator, can we open the queue for public comments on the entire legislative agenda that we discussed?
Yes, this is the moderator, and at the direction of the committee, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click that Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. Go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, this is the moderator, and it appears there are no requests for public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
All right, the Q&A panel is now closed.
Okay, so back on the agenda, we have we need to identify some dates for future committee meetings. Mr. Palaio, do you have a suggestion, like which month? And then we can narrow down to date.
I would look at, because we have a full board meeting coming up in July, July 16th, I believe.
Yes.
And then we have another one on November 12th. So I would say we should have one, at least one. It could be August, September, or October. We might want to wait until a little closer, like we might, probably not August, but maybe late September, early October. Look at scheduling a meeting so that if anything does come up that the committee wants to address prior to the next board meeting, we will have a meeting on the books. But unless there's some legislation that pops up that isn't currently, if a new bill gets introduced or a bill gets amended to impact us, there may not be much, if anything, to discuss at another meeting. So we can just get one on the books in case we need to meet. So again, I would look at late September, early October.
Yeah. So October, I have a very full month. I mean, it will be. I could squeeze a meeting, but I have very limited availability. September is a little bit better for me. I'm not sure for you, Mr. Sweet. Do you have a preference?
Late September would work.
So like the last week of September?
Yeah, that might. If we're looking at September, that would be best for me. Or even that week before, if that works better.
So we have a September 29 or September 30th. Is this like a Wednesday or Thursday or Tuesday, September 28th?
September 28th is a Tuesday.
would that work for everybody? September 28th, would that be a possibility?
That would work for me.
Okay, so that would work for me as well. Would that work for you, Mr. Pulio, and your staff?
Let me look real quick, just one second.
Sure.
September, you said 28th, correct?
Yes, Tuesday, September 28th.
Yeah, that date's fine.
Okay, do we want to do a 1 o'clock, 1 p.m. again? Is that a good time, or do we want to change the time?
Today we
Mr.
started.
Sweet, do you have a preference?
Today we started at 2 p.m. We can.
Okay,
That's 2 p.m. works for me.
okay.
Whatever time works for the two committee members, will.
Okay, so then
Sorry.
I would say September 28th at 2 p.m. is our next scheduled meeting. We'll have it on the calendar, and if we need to cancel, it's always easy to cancel.
And who will someone advise?
Correct. Sounds good.
Whether it's canceled? Mr. Pulio, your office will.
Yes, definitely. We'll let you know. We'll check back in with the committee members as we get closer to that date, and let you know if there's anything that needs to be discussed, and see if there's anything that you want to hold a meeting for, and if not, then we'll cancel it and let you know.
And I believe that's the only meeting that we need to put on the calendar. Do we need because we don't have a December meeting, right?
No, and you won't be here anymore, Frank.
Oh, that's
in
true.
December.
That's true. So that's true. That actually could be.
So if you,
You're right. You're right.
well, yeah, because your grace period ends in November, so yeah, so we can put you on the calendar if you want, but
No, that's
we don't want
okay.
to.
You're absolutely right, Mr. Puglia. All right, so no, that's good. So September 28th, 2 p.m. We got a date that works for everybody. That's wonderful. Mr. Knutz, do we need public comments on the agenda item on the future dates committee meeting?
Yes, Mr. Rufino. We do need to take public comment on each agenda item, even one simple as this.
No problem, no problem. So, moderator, would you please open the queue for public comments on agenda item number 5?
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the committee, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click that Q&A icon at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. Go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
All right, the Q&A panel is now closed.
One more quick question on that. Is it safe to assume that will also be via WebEx?
I'm sorry, Mr. Sweet, I didn't hear you.
Well, is it safe to assume that September 28th meeting will still be via WebEx?
Yes, it is.
Oh, okay. Well, here's the answer. I was gonna say that probably by the September 28th, we should have an in-person meeting. But
Although typically we don't have committee meetings in person, and so if anything, if the department isn't hosting WebEx anymore, then we would do it via teleconference or maybe Teams, like we did in the past. But it wouldn't be an in-person meeting. It would be either teleconference or WebEx.
Okay.
yeah, actually, I stand correct. You're right, Mr. Puleo. The committee meetings we do them by conference call. It was the board meeting that I'm hoping that the board meeting that will be in person, the November board meeting, hopefully by then.
Yeah, that may be
Yeah.
November.
Yep. Okay, so any other questions, Mr. Sweet?
No, sir.
Okay, so then we are moving to agenda item number 6, which is future agenda items. Mr. Sweet, do you have any future agenda items that would like to?
I do not.
Okay. I do not as well. So can we see if there is any public comments on the future agenda items?
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the committee, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click that Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. Go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, it appears there are no requests for public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
All right, the Q&A panel is now closed.
Great. Well, that brings us to the end of our meeting. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I'll second that motion with best wishes for everyone to have a great day for the rest of the day and great weeks ahead with the heat and everything else that the sun and the sky offer us.
Do we need to request public comment on that?
Yes, any public comments before we adjourn?
We don't need to request public comment on adjournment, but
Okay.
you certainly can if you would like.
Well, let's go ahead, moderator. We have tried. We have asked all day, so maybe we get lucky at this last one.
Okay. This is the moderator. At the direction of the committee, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click that Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner. Oh, I apologize. I actually didn't open up Q&A. I was so taken aback by now the Q&A is open. If any members of the public would like to make public comment on this item, they can click that Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of their WebEx screen. And I'll pause a moment to give the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, and it appears there are no requests for public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Please do.
All right, the Q&A panel is now closed.
Okay, and with that then, the meeting is adjourned. Have a good rest of the afternoon, everyone.